Okay, so I'm going to start this presentation. My name is supposed to be right there, but I forgot. But I do have a name. My name is Min Chen, and I'm the team lead of the OpenStack integration team at Red Hat. What we do is we work on integrating OpenStack with other cloud products like ManageIQ. And I'm up here with Marek Aufart and Petr Blaho, two engineers on our team. And today, I'm apparently going to be talking about ManageIQ and OpenStack. Lasers are really cool. This is a really vague title because I didn't work on this slide, so I'm going to skip it and talk about our agenda. So what are we going to go over? There's going to be a little bit of an introduction where I talk a little bit more about the team's history and what we've been trying to do in regards with ManageIQ. And then I'm going to start with a quick OpenStack 000 overview. For those of you who don't know, 000 is an official upstream OpenStack deployment program, and it's kind of the deployment and management architecture that we recommend for use with ManageIQ. That ties in with what we're going to talk in next. First, the cloud provider, which is something our team has taken on fairly recently over the past 6 months. So we're going to talk about the stuff we did over the past 6 months. And then we're going to talk about the infrastructure provider, and this is something we've owned from the beginning. It's fairly recent, maybe like a little over a year old, and we'll go over what that does and what it can do. And then we're going to talk briefly about what the two providers can do together, which is some pretty cool stuff, and then go over some future work. Okay, so our team and goals. So as I said, this is the OpenStack integration team. There's about 7 engineers. And it's a fairly young team, created maybe a little over a year ago. And our background is a bit of a mix. Some of us have worked on ManageIQ before. Some of us were mostly concerned with upstream OpenStack. But this is useful because what our job entails, a lot of times we're working with ManageIQ code. But sometimes ManageIQ wants some features that maybe aren't quite ready on upstream OpenStack or that they haven't prioritized. And so we'll go upstream, we'll talk with the upstream communities and ask them to try and prioritize some features. And once in a while, we'll even roll up our sleeves and we'll get code into upstream OpenStack and get it done that way. So it's a pretty fun mix of things we have to do. And so what we're trying to do with ManageIQ, well, there's a couple of things. One is we're trying to keep up with the latest OpenStack technologies. And OpenStack can move kind of fast. And there's a lot of cool new things that OpenStack can do every single release, every 6 months. And we're doing our best to keep up with them so that you guys can enjoy them too. Another goal is to close the gap with Horizon. Horizon is the upstream GUI for OpenStack. And Horizon is a great project. I worked upstream with them for a couple of cycles, and they're great people, and Horizon is a good technology. But what I found working with OpenStack and ManageIQ is that by putting the two things together, you can actually do a lot of really cool things that you can't do just with Horizon. Lastly, we want to close gaps between OpenStack providers and other ManageIQ providers. We're kind of one of the younger providers, and we want to catch up with other more established providers. Okay, so quickly, a quick overview of OpenStack 000, and this will be a very, very high overview because 000 is very complex, and I could spend like hours on this. But 000 stands for OpenStack on OpenStack, OOO. And the basic concept is you're using OpenStack to deploy OpenStack. So you start with undercloud, also called deployment cloud. And this is the cloud that only administrators might use. It contains the usual suspects from OpenStack, Ironic, Heat, Nova, Glance, Lambda, Cinder, Neutron. And what happens here is that administrator may plan out their cloud, and their cloud could be the cloud for their end users. And that cloud can be pretty complex. And we're talking about things like high availability, network isolations, all sorts of complex things. They configure the cloud how they want, and then they pass the parameters into Heat. And Heat is OpenStack's orchestration service. And what Heat will do is it will provision that cloud. It will orchestrate that cloud through Nova and Ironic, Ironic being the bare metal provisioning service. So we provision our cloud on bare metal. The undercloud also has things like Salamander, so that we can monitor, say, the usage of our bare metal nodes and get that information through the Salamander APIs. So that's what the undercloud does, and it will deploy an overcloud. And this is a more typical cloud, what an end user might expect to use. And things like a controller node, controller having like Keystone, the identity service, Nova, Swift, Cinder, Glance, Neutron, Salamander, RabbitMQ. It might have a couple of compute nodes running the Nova compute service. And then perhaps some storage nodes, block storage, Cinder, and object storage, Swift. So the biggest question is, why is this a good idea? Why do we like this? And the reason is it's very simple. It's because you're using the same APIs to deploy and manage your cloud as you are to actually use it. And this means you don't have to create your own APIs in order to manage your cloud. You can use established OpenStack APIs that have been vetted upstream and are being maintained upstream. And it's not all on you to maintain it. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Marek, who will talk about some of the cloud provider features.
Thank you. I will start with the object store because it's a recently implemented feature into the ManageIQ. It uses OpenStack object storage service, which is called Swift. We implemented its API to list objects to ManageIQ. OpenStack Swift called it containers. ManageIQ called it object stores. Anyway, its contents are objects. Next one, maybe more important, is volume management. On OpenStack side, volumes are provided by a Cinder block storage service, which is called Cinder. We implemented API version 2 of this service. Now, ManageIQ can manage like add, delete, and so on volumes. It is also possible to attach and detach volumes to the VMs. By default, there is a list view of the volumes, but because volumes are usually created with VMs or instances, we added this create functionality also into the VM provision form, so it should be easy for users to use.
I'm going to talk a bit about the ManageIQ reports. The person who implemented this couldn't be here, sadly. But he did some great work integrating OpenStack with established ManageIQ reports. So the reports we're talking about here, right size recommendation. If you're not familiar, that's when you look at a VM and you kind of see its usage and see how it's doing. And then based on its metrics, you can decide whether the report will recommend either maybe increasing its size or decreasing its size. There's also the capacity planning report, and there's something you do to kind of figure out where you want to put your VMs. So with the capacity planning report, you select a reference VM, which could be an existing VM, or it could be one that you manually input. And then based on information such as like CPU cores and stuff like that, the capacity planning report will tell you how many of that VM you might be able to fit into your compute cluster. And so in order to integrate OpenStack with this, we had to use Ironic and Ceilometer. Again, Ironic is the bare metal provisioning service. It's information about the bare metal nodes, and we take that information and we use that in these reports. Ceilometer is a telemetry service where we get metrics and things like CPU usage, memory usage, and again, those inform these reports.
Now about the Ceilometer events. I first would like to introduce what is Ceilometer. It's an OpenStack telemetry service which monitors and stores usage data of various OpenStack components like VMs or networks. These data are stored and can be analyzed. So we use acquiring events from Ceilometer as an alternative to monitoring AMQP message bus. AMQP message bus has some disadvantages. The biggest one is that when we use OpenStack with some special configuration like SSL enabled or some more complex deployments, there is no available port accessible by ManageIQ. The main reason is that ManageIQ tries to connect directly into AMQP service inside the OpenStack, but the OpenStack community does not consider this AMQP service as a public one. So it has some not good consequences. Using Ceilometer is better because it's a public OpenStack service. You don't have to specify endpoints or credentials. Everything goes directly from OpenStack. It's provided by OpenStack Keystone service. Implementing this functionality required changes on both OpenStack and ManageIQ side, so we took advantage of our team which can handle both technologies. Another two features we added is SSH key management. User can use it when SSH key pairs or public keys are uploaded into the Nova, and then during VM provisioning, assign it to the VM. So after VM is provisioned, user can easily connect without the password into the VM. Last feature is instance reconfigure. It is done by changing flavor of the instance. If you don't know what is the flavor, it's like a configuration of hardware of the instance, which says, for example, how many CPU cores or or the memory size of the instance. By changing this flavor, instance get new configuration, and user can use it, for example, to get more resources for the instance if it's necessary. Then to infra part, to Petr.
Thanks. So OpenStack infra provider connects to Undercloud from Triplo. And first we need to populate inventory. And we get some or quite a lot of information from Undercloud OpenStack service. So we get list of nodes from Ironic bare metal provisioning service. These are essentially physical machines the Undercloud is using and the Overcloud is running on top of. So next we have a list of roles. Deployment roles. Deployment role is essentially a definition of how the physical machine will be used in Overcloud. So it can be either a controller node which runs all the APIs and maybe UI. It can be compute node with Nova, or it can be storage node with Swift, for example. We get this information from orchestration service of OpenStack called Heat. And then we get a list of running services for each physical machine using a host fleecing feature of ManageIQ. It essentially SSH into physical machines and get various information from that. That's for the inventory. One of the basic features we need to do with managing OpenStack infra provider is the scaling up. So if we have on the Undercloud free physical node, we can just tell it to add themselves or itself into one of the deployment roles, which essentially means that we will increase the computational power or capacity of the appropriate role in the Overcloud. So for example, if you need more compute nodes for Overcloud, you scale up Undercloud with adding one host to the Overcloud or to the computation role. Another thing is that if you need to free your resources for another usage, you need to scale down. So that's essentially just removing the node from the deployment role and leaving into other use. Part of this logic is duplicated in Triplo, but Min will talk about this later. It's part of the future plans. As already mentioned, OpenStack contains Celometer telemetry service. This is the same for Undercloud too, so you can get some information from OpenStack infra providers about the utilization of your physical machines. So you know what the load is there, memory, I/O, and so. One of the interesting stuff was the auto-scaling for infra provider. This was done as a side project without prior requirements from PMs. It was done by Ladislav Smola. And essentially it was really easy because you already have in ManageIQ alerts and events implemented. you have automate feature, and combining these two, you can have automatically scaling of your VMs, and this is essentially just transformat the same stuff for physical machines using OpenStack Infra Provider, so you can automatically scale your OpenStack installation as needed if you have enough machines. Then interesting things comes when you combine OpenStack Cloud Provider with OpenStack Infra Provider. The need for this is that in cloud providers in ManageIQ there is no notion of physical machines, but for some actions connected with managing of OpenStack, you need to know to have any information about physical machines. So you can, when you are creating new OpenStack cloud provider and you already have some OpenStack infra providers defined in ManageIQ, you can connect them and use this information, for example, for virtual machine live migration feature, which is a standard Nova feature. Essentially, it just tells OpenStack to grab one VM and migrate it to another physical host, still being able to use it. Different feature is a host evacuate. Essentially, if something happens with your machine, you need to get all VMs from it and evacuate it to another machines, usually used when the machine is not responding for some other request or whatever. And future work, Min will talk about that.
Thanks, Petr. Okay, so what we're looking to do in the future. First of all, there's some general work we want to do. A lot of it having to do with the UI. I'm sure many of you saw the container team and the network team show off their really cool dashboard and topology views, and they were super cool, and we want to use them too. So hopefully they are written in such a way that we can easily use them. I'm sure they are. On the cloud side, we're looking at things of segregation. So there's lots of ways to partition your cloud, host aggregates, regions, availability zones. We want to provide that's kind of awareness inside of ManageIQ and provide the correct views for users. And then, of course, we want to continue to close horizon gaps. And this will feel a little hodgepodge, but there's just a lot of things we can do here. So things we're thinking about, center volumes, backup and restore, adding additional provisioning workflows, tenant management, being able to add and manage your cloud tenants, and same thing with host aggregates. On the infrastructure side, we're looking at node management. Right now, you might be able to power on or power off a node through ManageIQ, but we can also, Ironic also gives you the capability to add new nodes to its inventory or to remove those nodes, and we want to add those features. And past that, there's something that's probably a little bit even further in the future, but it's, in my opinion, just as important. And this goes back to what Petr was saying about the scaling work we did. When we did the scaling work, we found that we had to duplicate a lot of triple business logic. A lot of your logic was written in Python and was not exposed through an API. And we went to the triple team and said, is there a way we can work around this? And so what we did is we came up with different proposals. There was a healthy upstream discussion. And eventually, they decided that the best way to expose this trivial business logic, and they agreed that this was an important feature, was to use an OpenStack service called Mistral. Mistral is the OpenStack workflow service. It lets you define your own workflows and then to call, monitor, execute them through public REST APIs. So what this work is doing is it's putting the triple business logic within those workflows, and once that's done, we can access them super easily instead of copying your complicated business logic. And the logic here for deployment and managing OpenStack, if anybody has ever had to do it, it's extremely complex. We're talking about you have to call multiple OpenStack services with the right commands. You have to wait for the right things to happen and trigger things in the right order. All that complexity will be hidden behind a Mistral workflow, which we can call through a public API. And once that's done, things like scaling become almost trivial for us to expose through ManageIQ. The hard work will have to be done upstream, and the Triple team will take care of that, or we might help with that. But on the ManageIQ side, we can just use these workflows to be done. More than just scaling, things like deployment or updates or upgrades. all of those become extremely easy once this work is done. And I think that gives a lot of power to what ManageIQ will be able to do with their OpenStack deployments. So the next slide is supposed to be questions, but I did not put it in. But if anyone has questions, yeah, well, maybe it happened. Okay, well, oh.
It's a silly question, actually. Where do I get the sticker of the owl? Triple O owl.
I don't know.
I can give you mine.
Oh, thank you.
This is open source. Did you have questions? No. Oh, you want a sticker?
So you mentioned node management, but how does that relate with O? Because O you can also provision new computes and so on, and needs to be aware of what's going on, right? So what's the plan there?
Right. So node management. So when O provisions, say, like a new compute node, it needs to provision on top of an existing ironic node. So when I talk node management, all I mean is the ability to make ironic aware of new nodes and to perhaps do introspection, all the stuff that has to do to get the node ready to be deployed upon with say as a compute node or a controller node. Any other questions? Sorry.
So the Ceilometer eventing, is that in a certain version of OSP, or what version of OSP is that in? And then I did hear rumors that a lot of people turn Ceilometer off. So what happens if they turn it off? Is there no eventing that we're going to receive then for that OSP version, or how does that work?
Good question. We're talking about OSP 8. OSP 8 supports having the various OpenStack services send their events to Ceilometer, and you do have to configure your OSP in order to do that, and that's documented somewhere online. And if you ask me, I can point it to you later. If you turn it off, then yeah, you won't get Ceilometer events. You'll have to somehow get AMQP events if they're.
Yeah, I know the metrics are stored in Ceilometer as well, but a lot of times people turn Ceilometer off just because it's so taxing.
There's a big work in the community on OpenStack to update Ceilometer with the OP of the proper data lake to the metrics. There's a scaling issue that why people are responding to Ceilometer, but they are fixing. So we will get the benefits from OpenStack for us.
Yep, and we've actually been talking to the people doing this work upstream, and yeah, they've assured us it's targeted, I think, either for OSP 9 or OSP 10, probably OSP 10, and and once it's done, it's the public APIs remain the same, so the code's still fine, and you kind of get the benefits automatically. But in the meantime, yeah, if you turn Ceilometer off, you won't get Ceilometer events or metrics.
Then we could just plug into AMQP.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.